Hi, good morning, everyone. We are going to be using our handwriting books this morning, and you're going to need to turn to the page 58 and 59. It's the pages that are where we're practicing our lowercase, what letter? H sound, right? And then we're also going to practice our lowercase, what? B, yes, sound, B. So before we open up to those pages, let's practice writing it. Let's talk about it. Where do our letters start? They start at the top. So you start at the top, go down, back up, and over. That's our letter H. So try again. You dive down, and you swim up and over. That's our letter H. So of course you're gonna practice with your finger here. Practice making the letter. Then here you're gonna get out your pencil, trace over, and then wherever you see the dot, you do it by yourself. Trace, and then do it by yourself. And then you might wanna read this sentence down here and do what it says. The next letter you're going to practice is here, your letter B. It's very similar to your letter H. It's gonna start at the top in the same spot. It's going to go down, swim up, over, and back around to make your letter B. So again, you start at the top, go down, swim up, over, and around for letter B. So again, practice here with your finger. And then down here, you want to trace and then write it by yourself. Trace, write it by yourself. They've also got a sentence down here that you can read. Okay? So do that first today. But I also want to read you a story. There is a holiday coming up. Do you know what holiday is coming up? Easter. That's right, Easter. So I've got a story here called the Easter story. So let's read and find out. While we're reading this story, there's always things that happen at the beginning of a story, things that kind of happen in the middle, and things that happen at the end of the story. And so I want you to kind of be thinking about those things because we're going to do an activity with those things after I read the story. So be thinking about what happened at the beginning, what happened in the middle, and what happened at the end. So here we go. While Jesus was on earth, he healed the sick and taught people about God. So everywhere he went, men and women and boys and girls wanted to meet him. One day, he had to go to Jerusalem to celebrate a feast day, and he rode into town on a donkey. A crowd ran out to meet him. Some shouted, "Blessed is the King," and put their coats down in his path. Others waved palm branches and sang songs. The leaders were jealous. They did not like Jesus. "Look how the people follow this man," they whispered. "We must find a way to get rid of him." That night, Jesus ate the Passover feast with his friends. He knew it would be the last meal that they would eat together. He didn't want them to forget him. So when the food was passed around, he turned to them and said, "When you eat bread and drink wine like this, remember me." Jesus knew the jealous leaders would take him away soon. He also knew someone sitting in the room would turn on him. "Who is it, Lord?" asked John. Jesus answered, "The one I gave bread to." As he passed the loaf to Judas, Judas whispered an excuse and he left. After dinner, Jesus and some friends went to a garden. Jesus knew he would suffer and die, so he was very sad. "I'm going to pray now," Jesus said. "Please keep watch." His friends said, "Yes, Lord," but then they fell asleep. Jesus knelt and closed his eyes. "Father, can you take away this cup of suffering that is to come?" he said softly. "But I will do whatever you want." And then Jesus got up and went back to his friends. Suddenly, a group of soldiers marched up to Jesus. Judas was with them. He ran over to Jesus and greeted him with a kiss. This was a signal for the soldiers to arrest Jesus. And when they did, his friends left him and they ran away. Jesus was brought before the leaders. Some people told lies about him, but they had no proof, so the leaders could not charge him with anything wrong. Then they asked, "You say you are the Son of God. Is that true?" Jesus answered, "Yes, I am." This made the leaders angry. "This man is guilty of a terrible offense. He says he is God's son when he is not," they shouted. "For this he must be punished." And you see, they didn't believe him. So they turned Jesus over to the Roman governor, and it was decided that Jesus must die on the cross. But first he had to carry it a long way to a place called Calvary. The cross was very heavy, and Jesus fell 3 times. His friends could not do anything but look on and cry. Jesus died soon. His friends took his body and buried it in a new tomb, and they rolled a big stone in front. But the leaders were still afraid. They remembered that Jesus said he would rise again in 3 days. So they gave an order for soldiers to guard the tomb day and night. Well, a few days later, some friends went to Jesus' tomb. The big stone was rolled away. It was empty. "It's empty," they shouted when they looked in. And then they saw an angel. "Jesus is not here," he said. "He is alive again." So they ran to tell the others. After Jesus rose from the dead, he visited his friends who were happy to see him. Before he left for heaven, he told them to spread the good news of God's love to everyone. Because Jesus died and rose again, he earned us a place in heaven. And that's why we celebrate Easter. So, this is what I want you to think about and what I want you to write about in your writer's notebook. Open up to the first page that doesn't have anything written on it. And on that first page, I want you to write a large B at the top. That stands for beginning. And then I want you to turn the page and write a very large M at the top, because that stands for what? Middle? Good. My paper doesn't want to cooperate with me here. Here we go. So you turn the page and you write a big M at the top, and then turn the page and write a big E at the top. So the first thing you want to do is to think in your brain about the story I just read to you about Jesus and about Easter and about what happened in the beginning of the story. So let's take a little picture walk to remind our brains what happened at the beginning of the story. We remember, if we look at the pictures, Jesus was riding a donkey into Jerusalem. And some people there were very happy to see him. Others were not. Other things that happened in the beginning, Jesus had supper with his friends for the very last time. That's also something else that happened at the beginning. And then as we go a little further into the story, we hear what happens in the middle. And in the middle, this is where the governor of Jerusalem is very angry. They don't believe that Jesus is the Son of God, and they tell him that he's going to die. And they make him carry this cross, and in the middle of the story, he passes away and he dies on the cross. And so then he's buried, towards the end, he's buried in this tomb. And there's guards that are watching over the tomb. Some people are very sad, and they've come to see the tomb. And when they come and the stone is rolled away, here at the end, we find out that Jesus has risen and he is not there, that there is an angel in his place. And they tell him that Jesus has gone and Jesus has gone to heaven. And so that's what we see happen at the end of the story. So it's now your turn to go into your writer's notebook and write something that you remember that happened at the beginning. Then write something that you remember that happened in the middle, and then write something that you remember that happened at the end of the story. Practice all of those good sentence writing skills that Miss Willette has been teaching you about the beginning, starting with a uppercase letter, the end, ending with a period, have space between your words. Think about your sentence, count the words in your sentence, draw those lines for the words, and then write your words, okay? I hope to see some very good sentences about the Easter story. All right, I'll see you again tomorrow.